Recording. Welcome everyone to today's webinar on the Introduction to Integrated Services Bundling. As many of you know, Achieving the Dream and the Working Student Success Network has partnered with NBC to offer a series of webinars to provide an introduction or perhaps a refresher on the role of bundling and sequencing and the integrated service delivery model. This series will be a helpful introduction to individuals that are new to the ISD concept, whether or not their approach is already operational on campus. And we're really excited to offer this webinar series to all of you. And we thank you all for participating in today's webinar. So this will be a three-part webinar series. And over the course of the three webinars, you will all have the ability to understand the rationale for the ISD model, be able to distinguish the three pillars of an ISD strategy and categorize their existing or prospective services within the three pillars that we'll talk about a little later, demonstrate an understanding of intentional bundling, map and document a sequence of integrated services that ensures students have consistent access to each element of designated bundles, as well as identify strategies for sustaining integrated services approach through policy, practice changes, resource allocation, and or external partnerships. And so we are really excited to be able to offer this and to be able to highlight the work that the Working Student Success Network has been doing over the past 3 years. Today is the first webinar in the series, which again will be the Introduction to Integrated Services, really focusing on how do we bundle and package services to our students in a very seamless delivery process. And so this first webinar will cover the rationale for the integrated service delivery model and the required new ways of working. We'll introduce the three core service pillars, demonstrate how bundling services reinforces or magnifies each service element, and share results from existing research that supports the efficacy of the ISD approach. The webinar will be led by both Jenna Bryant and Abby Parcell from MDC, and they're going to do a wonderful job in being able to kind of go into some of the objectives that I just discussed. And so again, we thank you for being able to participate and join us in today's webinar. We're really looking forward to having a great conversation, and I'm going to turn it over to them. And if you can all hold your questions until the very end, that would be wonderful. But feel free to include your questions in the chat box or in the question box that will be to the right of your screen, and then we'll be able to address those at the conclusion of the webinar. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to both Jenna and Abby to take us on our journey of learning a little bit more about the integrated service delivery model.
Great. We are excited to be here with you today and excited to share a little bit of what we have learned from the community colleges that we've worked with over the course of our time working in this arena. So I first want to give you an introduction just to MDC really quickly. We are an organization that's been around for almost 50 years, helping communities and organizations apply demonstrated solutions to barriers that separate people from opportunity. And a lot of that partnership has happened with community college and workforce partners focused on programs that promote achievement and employment success. A great example of that is our work as one of the founding partners with the Achieving the Dream Network and also the Working Families Success Network, one of the forerunners of the Working Student Success Network. What's most important to understand is that Working Student Success Network is not a standalone program, but an approach. What changes is how services are delivered. Integrated Services Delivery, or ISD, is the underlying strategy for the Working Student Success Network. ISD is a blueprint for a new way of offering support services to help lower-income people, students that are already on your campus, receiving services that you're probably already offering on your campus in many cases. This integrated services approach is helping nonprofits and community colleges rethink how they serve working families, students, and others by focusing intently on key outcomes for clients, including job placement and retention, family income, credit score improvement, as well as completion rates for college degrees or training programs. The strategy creates new opportunities for individuals, helps connect employers to well-prepared workers, and gives nonprofits and community colleges an effective way to provide services to low-income families. A little history of the strategy. Beginning in 2004, the Annie E. Casey Foundation developed and piloted a theory of change that became known as integrated service delivery. The Casey Foundation worked with community-based organizations and a few community colleges at the very beginning to implement the approach through an initiative called the Center for Working Families. That included a community college learning network managed by MDC to learn how colleges could implement ISD in an educational setting. In 2012, the ISD approach was expanded to several other organizations, and the Center for Working Families initiative became part of the Working Family Success Network, a collaboration of national partners from philanthropy, community-based organizations like LISC and United Ways, technical assistance partners, and more community colleges working to advance the ISD approach and help families find multiple entry points in their communities to receive these vital services. ISD is now implemented in more than 170 sites across the United States. Then in 2014, the Working Family Success Network National Leadership Group decided to intensify their ISD efforts in community colleges by starting the Working Student Success Network, an affiliate of the Working Families Network led by Achieving the Dream. The WSSN takes many of the lessons learned and implements that ISD strategy through a slightly more prescriptive approach in order to help colleges bring those efforts to scale. While there are colleges in both the Working Family Success Network and the Working Student Success Network, both of them are sharing learnings together all the time, and we'll be sharing some of those with you today. Under the integrated services delivery approach, individuals receive a coordinated set of 3 core services or pillars: education and career development and services, income and work supports, and financial education services and connection to asset building. Within each core service area are a host of academic and non-academic support services that help students stay in school and increase their financial stability. These might include job training, tax assistance, or access to affordable financial products that they may not have been aware of. Our main topic for today, though, is bundling, and what that means. It is a core element of the integrated service delivery strategy. Bundling is a way of providing a set of services to a student or client in a seamless manner in which the client is better off by receiving those services together in the bundle in a relatively short time frame rather than having to access those services separately. Bundling reduces silos across organizations and communities that often make it more difficult or more tedious to access multiple services, particularly and in particular in a more time-sensitive way. Bundling has been described as the thread and needle that weave together a set of services that help students move toward educational success and job placement. Why do we focus on bundling as a key strategy in this ISD approach? Because there is evidence that shows it works. In a key study from Apt Associates, participants who received bundled services were 3 to 4 times more likely to achieve a major economic outcome than those whose services were not intentionally bundled. A major economic outcome is something like getting out of debt, purchasing a car, or completing an education or training program. A recent study of financial opportunity centers in Chicago conducted by Economic Mobility Services concluded that that integrating financial coaching and employment services is a really effective strategy to help individuals improve their financial situations. As they looked at 2 years of program data, individuals had taken a lot of steps to improve their financial stability, and relative to a comparison group, those students who had received bundle services were more likely to be employed year-round, to have reduced certain types of debt, and to have built more positive credit histories. We also conducted a 2012 documentation study of community colleges that were implementing the ISD approach, and those students who received bundled services had higher retention rates, in some cases 14% higher than the college-wide retention rate. So that's what bundling is, the basics, and some of the really exciting results that we've seen at both community-based organizations and community colleges about how it works. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jenna to talk a little bit more about what it looks like on your campus.
Thank you, Abby. So there's different ways to bundle, and there's a number of strategies that you could use. Below on the screen, you can see that there's kind of 3 main ways to bundle programs or bundle services. One is through program design, by providing the 3 strands of services separately, and students can access one or more of those services at their choice. Another way is through staffing, where one staff member provides multiple core services to students, and then through technology, which is a little bit more of support that helps improve the bundling process. So we'll dig into each of those separately. So for program design, there's a couple of different ways that you might design your programs to think about bundling, or that some of you have designed your programs to think about bundling your services. You can separate services with referrals, where participants can access services in one location and are told about other services in another location in a nearby community. That's usually through a referral. So what this looks like is that the education and coaching could be provided on campus, but benefit screening and access is done at a nearby human services partner through a referral. There's also the co-location of services model with referral, and that's where all the services are provided in one central location on campus, and students can access those in the same area, but it's actually different providers in that one location providing those services. One example of that in the Working Student Success Network is SparkPoint at the SparkPoint Center at Skyline. Another way is through services provided sequentially, where students must do one service in order to access another services. That way, the services are staged, or they're sequenced, with the most attractive service being the last service received. So this is really when we talk about bundling and sequencing, which we'll talk a little bit more about sequencing in one of the next webinars. We're talking about starting to think about your student flows that you develop during implementation, or a client flow. And an example of this is if you have students sign up for tax prep services, but they have to actually attend a financial literacy workshop before their tax prep appointment. That would be a way of sequencing services. Then there's having 2 or 3 of the strands of services provided through a program or course. This is what many of you guys are already doing with your student success courses, by including information about benefits and financial literacy, and with coupling that with college success skills. And then finally, using some sort of mechanism that bundles the services together. For example, if you offer a performance-based scholarship that incorporates the services from all 3 areas as requirements for receiving that scholarship. And this would be something like having the financial coaching sessions and job readiness and search services as requirement for receiving any of those scholarship funds, or as before the disbursements are made, the multiple disbursements are made for those funds. Then thinking about how you would bundle services through staffing is one, just having staff work as generalists. They provide maybe one or two services directly and then make referrals. So you could have an achievement coach that performs academic services and provides the initial screening of students for public benefits, but they may make referrals to other staff or partners to do provide some of the other services, of course, with active follow through. And then there's where you have staff cross-trained to provide multiple services, and it kind of regardless of their functional roles. So you may have a coach or a faculty member trained to do other services. A faculty member could be trained to do financial coaching. The coach could be trained to provide benefit screening. And then something kind of similar is using the role or function to provide multiple services. So as you think about coaching, that the coaches are providing career and financial coaching, so that's being cross-trained, but also having the coach provide one of the income and work support services. So there's a college in the Working Student Success Network now that currently has staff members trained as career and financial coaches, and one of those staff members that is a coach also provides and operates the food pantry for students. So that flows under the income and work support. And then finally, thinking about how technology can help you help you bundle services. So you could use a data system, using one data system to track services in all three areas to ensure that participants are receiving bundled services. What this means, or what this could look like, is that you're collecting data on your process about who receives 2 out of 3 core services in core areas, or who's receiving 3 out of 3 core services. And then the next step would be using a data system to facilitate referrals and case management across multiple sites. So that could be across multiple departments, and it could also be that you're using the same tool or data system as community partners who are also providing those services. So in all of these examples, where we've talked about bundling of services, we're really looking at services in at least 2 core service categories or pillars. But it should be noted that you can bundle within one core category, and you might find instances when a bundle within one category, like financial education and asset building, works best for a student. So what this would look like is that during the course of an engagement, a student would attend a budget workshop. They might meet once with a financial coach to discuss available financial products. It could be that the coach is connecting them to a matched savings account that helps them pay for their tuition in the future, or that the student has monthly meetings with the financial coach regarding their long-term financial goals, or helping them revisit and review their monthly budget. So all of these services would roll up into that one pillar, the third one around financial education services and asset building. But really, when we're talking about intentional bundling, what we're talking about is bundling across 2 or 3 core service areas, often at scale and in a sequenced way that makes the most sense for the students. So bundling across core service areas, or intentional bundling, would be that could look like the student attends a job readiness workshop. They also complete a benefit screening and application with the case manager, or whoever's providing those services on your campus or in your community, and that they also meet monthly with a financial coach to track progress on their budget goals. So that hits all 3 core service areas, and that would be a bundle. And then this kind of brings up the question of when to bundle, which I would say almost always, but the when really is determined by the academic and non-academic needs of your students, the services that your institution can offer, and then what relationship you already have with your community partners, and what services they can provide. really the best time to assess your bundle for a particular student is at intake. And you can decide kind of what they need to keep them in school and allow them to have the best balance between education, family, and work. So as you think about your bundles, or you think about creating new bundles, there's some tips and guidance that we'd like to share with you that we've gleaned from the Working Family Success Network and the Working Student Success Network and some of our national partners. So one of the big tips is to really evaluate your bundles. So as you reassess the bundles that you've already created of services, get feedback from students. Do some surveys and ask them how the flow of services were. Did they feel like the way that they went about receiving those services was problematic or time intensive? And then also check back with what your staff looks or thinks about the services, because staff are also impacted by the bundles. Consider having the staff involved in the delivery of services reflect on the process. Do they think there's a more efficient way to provide services in a bundled manner? What additional training is required for them to be able to provide services? And think about how often you present the WSSN student outcomes to other departments that provide services to students. So it's really thinking about that full internal feedback loop and how that can influence your service bundles that you have created or will create. And then also think about what other information you might get from evaluating your service bundles. For example, maybe you want to understand the average number of interactions it takes to get a student through their first year of school or to completion. The next thing to think about is revisiting your student or client flow, the order in which students move through integrated services, kind of in aggregate. So does it make sense for you to think about adding an intentional set of bundled services? Again, using your student surveys and your feedback from staff can help you do that. And then one tip that one of the schools learned is start easy. Think about where there's a natural place and program where most of the students already receive one service. Do some services naturally fit together, like financial aid and budgeting, for example? One of the colleges mentioned that the challenges they faced in the past when trying to bundle was bundling too many things too quickly, especially when it impacted staff roles. And so they had to kind of revisit and go back and really make sure they got buy-in from staff that were affected by the delivery of services within that bundle. And as you're thinking about staff, again, think about the training needs again, and not only just the training to new staff, but ongoing and existing staff. And then, drop the word bundling, which I'm sure most of you guys are not using when you're communicating about the services to students and staff, but occasionally that does happen, and it doesn't really, recognize it doesn't really make sense to students and some of the staff. What does make sense to them is thinking about scholarship requirements with the flow of services that they may receive. And then incentivize the behaviors you want to encourage as part of the work. Thinking back to outcomes, think about what skills and abilities you want students to adopt. Is it understanding financial concepts and terms, budgeting, saving, and incentivize either the practice leading to the outcome or the outcome itself. So we really want you to remember that the purpose of bundling is to focus on the outcomes you want to see for your students, and then that should help you determine your service bundles, and not really focusing on the services themselves as much. And so what we mean here is that if you're trying to help, an example would be if you're trying to help a student save for emergencies, is incentivize the student in saving for those emergencies through a gift card or they get something for actually coming back to the financial coach and reviewing their budget and saving extra money. So think of how that could happen. So at this is kind of the base overall of, or overview of bundling. We're sure this probably has left you guys with many questions. We'd love to hear them. So at this time, we'll open it up for questions so that you guys can, we can help clarify some of the comments and suggestions we've made today. Thank you.
So thank you all so much for all of your questions. And I also want to just take a moment to thank both Jenna and Abby for a wonderful presentation. We hope that you've been able to better understand the rationale for the ISD model, the 3 core service pillars, and how it has really led to successful outcomes for students. And that's what we're here to do, right? To improve the outcomes for our students and provide the supports that they need in order to fulfill their potential. And so we really hope that you've been able to gain better clarity around the ISD model and how it works. And we hope that the tips will be really useful to all of you. So again, we thank you for participating in today's webinar on the introduction to integrated services and really being able to focus on bundling, right? So how do we package these services for our students in a seamless manner? On the slide that you're now viewing, it has a link to joining the Achieving the Dreams listserv for more information, so feel free to sign up there, as well as my contact information here at APD and Jenna and Abby's contact information at NDC. Again, we just want to thank you. We look forward to hearing from you all again at the second webinar, which will focus on student flow. And so just really quickly, to just give you a quick summary, the second webinar will take the opportunity and time to illustrate how students can access services via different entry points within a college, but still receive the same bundle of services. And so that becomes really critical as we think about how all of our students are in very different places. And so how do you actually gain entry into some of the supports that they need? We'll also have the opportunity to discuss a few models for mapping student flow to ensure a proper handoff and consistent service delivery. So again, we're really looking forward to continuing this conversation on the ISD model and provide examples from some of our colleges to really be able to provide practical tools and resources for all of you to implement this work at your own institution. So again, we thank you for participating. We thank you for your wonderful questions. We thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you again. Have a great day, everyone.